A chance meeting under city lights, the Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. Against the October night, as Natalie Brooks stepped onto the rooftop terrace of the Meridian Hotel, she clutched her portfolio tightly, feeling completely out of place among the crowd of medical professionals and tech entrepreneurs attending the Healthcare Innovation Summit after-party. As a freelance graphic designer, she had been hired to create promotional materials for one of the sponsoring companies. But now that her work presentation was complete, she felt like an outsider looking into a world of wealth and prestige she could never truly belong to. The autumn breeze carried the scent of expensive cologne and champagne as Natalie made her way to the far corner of the terrace, away from the clusters of animated conversations about surgical innovations and biotechnology investments. She leaned against the glass railing, watching the tiny cars move through the streets 30 floors below, wondering if she should just leave early and catch the next flight back to Seattle, escaping the medical jargon too? A warm, rich voice asked from beside her. Natalie turned to find herself looking into the most striking hazel eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark brown hair that had just enough wave to look effortlessly perfect. He wore a navy suit that fit him like it had been custom-made, which it probably had been, and he held 2 glasses of wine in his hands. "I thought you might need this," he continued, offering her one of the glasses with a gentle smile that made her heart skip unexpectedly. These events can be overwhelming, especially when everyone seems to speak their own language. "Thank you," Natalie accepted the glass, noticing his hands were elegant and steady, the hands of someone who worked with precision. "I'm definitely drowning in terminology I don't understand. I'm just a designer who got hired to make things look pretty." "Just a designer?" He raised an eyebrow, his smile widening. "I'd argue that making complex medical concepts visually accessible is far more valuable than most people realize. I'm Julian, by the way, Natalie." She shook his extended hand, feeling a jolt of electricity at the contact that made her wonder if he felt it too. The way his eyes lingered on hers suggested he did. They talked for hours, losing track of time as the party continued around them. Julian was surprisingly easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions about her work designing for healthcare companies, her passion for making medical information more accessible to everyday people, and her dream of one day creating educational health materials for underserved communities. He shared his own work in medicine, though he remained vague about specifics, focusing instead on his frustration with how profit-driven the healthcare industry had become. "Sometimes I wonder if we've lost sight of why we got into this field," Julian said, his expression growing serious as he gazed out at the city. "It should be about healing people, not just building empires and impressing shareholders." Natalie studied his profile, noticing the tension in his jaw, the weight of unspoken burdens in his eyes. "You sound like someone who cares deeply, but feels stuck in a system you can't change." He turned to her, and something in his expression shifted, becoming vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. "You see that after just meeting me? I designed for healthcare companies, remember? I've met a lot of doctors and executives. Most of them have either given up caring or never cared at all. You're different." The air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. As the night deepened and the party began to thin, neither wanted to leave. When Julian suggested they continue their conversation somewhere quieter, Natalie knew exactly what she was agreeing to. She had never been the type for one-night encounters, had always been cautious and practical, but something about this man made her want to be reckless, to seize a moment of magic before returning to her ordinary life in his hotel suite. With the city lights painting patterns across the walls, they discovered a connection that transcended the physical. Julian touched her like she was precious, kissed her like he was memorizing her, whispered her name like a prayer. They talked between kisses, sharing secrets and dreams, laughing at inside jokes that formed in real time. For those stolen hours, Natalie felt seen and cherished in a way she never had before. When reality comes knocking 3 months later, Natalie sat on the bathroom floor of her small Seattle apartment, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her trembling hands. Her roommate, Jennifer, knocked gently on the door. "Nat, you okay in there?" Natalie opened the door, wordlessly showing Jennifer the test. Her friend's eyes widened before she pulled Natalie into a fierce hug. "Okay," Jennifer said, her voice steady and practical. "First question, do you know how to contact the father?" Natalie shook her head, tears finally spilling over. "I don't even know his last name, Jen. Just Julian. He was in town for a conference. I thought it was just one perfect night, and then I left before he woke up because I was scared of making it awkward. I never imagined this would happen over the next few weeks." Natalie tried to process her new reality while dealing with severe morning sickness that made it nearly impossible to work. Her doctor, concerned about her symptoms and overall health, referred her to a high-risk pregnancy specialist. "The fatigue and nausea you're experiencing is more intense than typical," Dr. Patterson explained during her appointment. "I want you to see a specialist who can do comprehensive screening. Given your symptoms, we need to rule out certain complications. I'm referring you to Hayes Medical Center in Manhattan. They have the best maternal-fetal medicine department on the East Coast." Manhattan. Natalie's heart sank. "I can't afford that. I barely have enough for regular prenatal care. They have a program for patients who need specialized care regardless of financial situation," Dr. Patterson assured her. "Dr. Julian Hayes personally established it. He believes everyone deserves access to the best medical treatment." Did the name hit Natalie like a physical blow? Julian Hayes. It couldn't be the same Julian. Hayes was a common enough name, but something in her gut twisted with intuition. 2 weeks later, Natalie walked through the gleaming marble lobby of Hayes Medical Center, feeling small and shabby in her Target maternity jeans and cardigan. Everything about the place screamed wealth and prestige, original artwork on the walls, a grand piano in the atrium where someone played soft classical music, staff in crisp designer uniforms moving with quiet efficiency. Brooks. A kind-faced nurse approached her. "I'm Rebecca. Dr. Hayes will see you shortly. Can I get you anything while you wait? Water? Tea? Something to eat?" "Water would be great, thank you," Natalie managed. Her stomach churning with nerves that had nothing to do with morning sickness, she was led to a private waiting area that looked more like a luxury hotel lounge than a medical facility. Soft leather chairs, fresh flowers on every table. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Natalie perched on the edge of a chair, clutching her worn purse and wondering how she had ended up in this surreal situation. Natalie Brooks. A familiar voice called, and her entire world tilted on its axis. Standing in the doorway, clipboard in hand and white coat over an expensive suit, was Julian. His hazel eyes, the ones she had seen in her dreams for 3 months, went wide with shock. The clipboard clattered to the floor as they stared at each other, the air crackling with recognition and disbelief. "Natalie," he breathed, and the way he said her name confirmed that he had thought about her as much as she had thought about him. "Dr. Hayes," she responded, her voice barely above a whisper as the full weight of reality crashed over her. The man she had spent one magical night with, the father of her child, was not just a doctor. He was the Dr. Julian Hayes, owner of one of the most prestigious medical centers in the country. A billionaire whose face she now realized she had seen on magazine covers about healthcare innovation. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. 3 months of wondering and missing and trying to forget collapsing into this single impossible moment. Then Julian seemed to remember where they were. He bent to retrieve his clipboard, his hands shaking slightly, before gesturing toward his office. "Please come in," he said, his professional mask slipping back into place, though his eyes remained locked on hers with an intensity that made her skin burn. "We have a lot to discuss." As Natalie walked past him into the office, catching the familiar scent of his cologne, she knew with absolute certainty that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. The fairy tale night they had shared was about to collide with a reality neither of them could have anticipated. Behind closed doors, Julian closed the office door with careful precision, as if the simple act required all his concentration. Natalie stood in the center of his expansive office, surrounded by medical journals, framed diplomas from Harvard and Johns Hopkins, and photographs of Julian shaking hands with presidents and celebrities. This was his world, a universe so far removed from her tiny Seattle apartment that it felt like standing on a different planet. "Please." "Sit," Julian gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. But instead of taking his own seat, he leaned against the desk, close enough that she could see the pulse jumping in his throat. "I looked for you." The words caught Natalie off guard. "What? After that night?" "I woke up and you were gone. No note, no number, nothing. I had my assistant search the conference registry, but you weren't listed as an attendee. I thought maybe I had dreamed you." His voice was rough, raw with emotion. 3 months, Natalie. 3 months wondering if I'd ever see you again. "I left because I thought it was easier," she admitted, gripping the arms of the chair. "I thought if I stayed, it would hurt more when reality set in. You were clearly someone important, and I was just a freelance designer from Seattle. It felt like Cinderella at midnight, except I left before the clock could strike." Julian moved closer, kneeling down so they were at eye level. "You were never just anything to me. That night meant something. It wasn't just physical attraction or conference boredom. I felt something I've never felt before, and it terrified me."
Natalie's
Eyes filled with tears. "Julian, I need to tell you something. I didn't come here to find you. I didn't even know you were you. My doctor sent me because I need specialized care, and I can't afford it anywhere else." She took a shaking breath. "I'm 14 weeks pregnant. The baby is yours." The color drained from Julian's face. He stood abruptly, walked to the window, then back to her, running his hands through his hair in a gesture she remembered from that night when he told her about his complicated relationship with his family's expectations. "Are you certain?" he asked, then immediately shook his head. "Sorry, that was a stupid question." "Of course you're certain. I just need a moment to process this." "Take all the time you need," Natalie said quietly. "I've had a few weeks to get used to the idea myself. I'm not here to make demands or complicate your life. I just need medical care, and then I'll go back to Seattle, and you'll never have to worry about this affecting your reputation." Julian spun around, his expression fierce. "Never worry? Natalie, do you think I'm the kind of man who would abandon his child? Who would let you go through this alone?" He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "I don't know how we'll navigate this, but we will navigate it together." "But you don't understand." Natalie pulled her hands away, standing to face him. "I looked you up after I found out about this appointment. You're not just some doctor, Julian. You're a billionaire. You're on the board of 6 hospitals. You're engaged to a senator's daughter. Your wedding is in 4 months, and it's been featured in Town and Country magazine. I saw the photos of you and Cassandra Wellington at charity galas. She's perfect for your world." The mention of Cassandra's name made Julian's jaw tighten. "That engagement is complicated. It's not what you think." "Looks pretty straightforward to me," Natalie said, her voice breaking. "You're marrying someone else, and I'm pregnant with your baby. That's about as complicated as it gets." The ultrasound that changed everything before Julian could respond. There was a soft knock at the door. Rebecca, the nurse, poked her head in with an apologetic smile. "Dr. Hayes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your next patient is waiting, and you have that board meeting in an hour. Should I reschedule Ms. Brooks's examination?" "No," Julian said firmly. "Clear my afternoon. Everything can wait." He looked at Natalie. "Let me do the ultrasound. I need to see that everything is progressing normally. Will you let me do that?" Natalie nodded, not trusting her voice. Minutes later, she was lying on the examination table in the adjoining medical suite, her shirt lifted to expose her slightly rounded belly. Julian's hands were gentle but professional as he applied the cold gel, though she noticed they trembled slightly when they touched her skin. The room filled with the whooshing sound of a heartbeat, strong and steady. Julian adjusted the transducer, his eyes fixed on the monitor. Then his movements stopped abruptly. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What?" "What's wrong?" Natalie tried to sit up, panic flooding through her. "Nothing's wrong. Nothing at all." Julian's voice was filled with wonder. "Natalie, there are 2 heartbeats. You're carrying twins." The words seemed to echo in the quiet room. Natalie stared at the screen, where Julian was pointing out 2 distinct forms, 2 perfect little beings growing inside her. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of it hit her fully for the first time. Not just 1 baby, but 2. 2 lives that she and this man had created in one night of unexpected magic. They're beautiful, Julian murmured, his professional composure cracking as emotion flooded his voice. Absolutely perfect. Look at this one, already moving around. And this one seems calmer, more reserved. For several minutes, they simply watched the screen together, the tension and complications between them fading as they shared this profound moment. Julian took measurements, checking every detail with the thoroughness of the exceptional surgeon he was, but also with the tenderness of a father seeing his children for the first time. Everything looks excellent, he said finally, printing out several images. You're healthy, they're healthy. We'll need to monitor closely because of the twin pregnancy, but I see no concerns right now. He handed her tissues to clean the gel from her stomach. I want you to move to New York. What? Natalie sat up, pulling her shirt down. Julian, I can't just uproot my entire life. You need specialized care throughout this pregnancy. Twin pregnancies are high risk, Natalie. You need to be somewhere with immediate access to top-level maternal-fetal medicine. I have a property in Brooklyn that's sitting empty, a brownstone that I bought as an investment. You can stay there, rent-free. I'll cover all your medical expenses. I can set you up with freelance design work through my hospital network so you can support yourself. This is insane, Natalie protested. Even as part of her recognized the logic in his plan. What about your fiancé? What about your family? How do you think this is going to look? Julian's expression hardened. I'll handle Cassandra and my family. Right now, my priority is making sure you and our children are safe and healthy. Our children, Natalie repeated softly. You keep saying that like it's simple. It is simple, Julian insisted. These are my children. You are the mother of my children. Everything else is just noise that we'll figure out how to manage. No. But even as he said it, Natalie could see the conflict in his eyes, the weight of responsibilities and expectations that he carried like chains. The unwanted encounter a week later. Natalie found herself moved into the Brooklyn brownstone, a 4-story beauty in Park Slope that probably cost more than she would earn in her entire lifetime. Julian had been true to his word, setting her up with a home office, connecting her with hospital administrators who needed design work, and scheduling her next prenatal appointment. She arrived at Hayes Medical Center on a Tuesday morning, feeling slightly more settled in her new reality, but still overwhelmed by how drastically her life had changed. As she checked in at the reception desk, she noticed a tall, striking woman in a cream-colored designer suit speaking with the hospital administrator. The woman's blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup flawless, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive. She radiated confidence and belonging in this world of wealth and privilege. Ms. Brooks? Rebecca appeared with her usual warm smile. Dr. Hayes is running a few minutes behind. He got called into an emergency surgery this morning. Would you like to wait in his private consultation room? It's more comfortable than the main waiting area. The main waiting area is fine, Natalie assured her, not wanting special treatment. But Rebecca was already guiding her down the hallway. Trust me, Dr. Hayes would insist. He's very particular about his patients being comfortable. Rebecca led her to a beautiful room with plush seating and a coffee bar. Help yourself to anything you'd like. He should be done shortly. Natalie had just poured herself a cup of herbal tea when the door opened and the blonde woman from the lobby swept in. Up close, she was even more stunning, with ice blue eyes and the kind of bone structure that suggested generations of genetic perfection. Oh, I'm sorry, the woman said with a friendly smile. I didn't realize anyone was using this room. I'm Cassandra Wellington. I was just looking for my fiancé, Dr. Hayes. Have you seen him? Natalie's stomach dropped. Of course. This was Cassandra, the woman Julian was supposed to marry in 4 months, the woman whose perfect life Natalie was about to destroy. He's in surgery, Natalie managed, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. I'm waiting for an appointment with him. Wonderful. Julian is the absolute best, Cassandra said, settling into the chair across from Natalie with easy grace. Are you a new patient? I don't think I've seen you here before, and I'm here quite often. I'm on the hospital's fundraising committee. Yes, I'm new. I just moved to New York, Natalie said, hoping to keep the conversation brief, but Cassandra was clearly in a chatty mood. Where from? What brings you to Hayes Medical Center? Though I suppose being treated by the best doctor in the city is reason enough, she laughed, a musical sound that made Natalie feel even more inadequate. I'm biased, of course, but Julian truly is extraordinary, both as a surgeon and as a person. I can see that, Natalie said carefully, taking a sip of her tea to avoid further conversation. We're getting married in April, Cassandra continued, pulling out her phone to show Natalie photos of elaborate wedding preparations. The Plaza Hotel, 800 guests. It's going to be the social event of the season. My father, Senator Wellington, is hosting. Have you heard of him? Natalie shook her head, overwhelmed by the cascade of details about a wedding that might never happen. A future that Julian had promised Cassandra, while simultaneously promising to be there for Natalie and their children. I'm boring you with wedding talk, Cassandra laughed. What are you seeing Julian for, if you don't mind me asking? He specializes in several areas. Prenatal care, Natalie said quietly. I'm pregnant. Cassandra's face lit up with genuine warmth. How wonderful. Congratulations. How far along are you? About 15 weeks. Oh, that's such an exciting time. Julian and I have talked about having children, of course. We want at least 3. He'll be such an amazing father. Cassandra's smile was so genuine, so trusting, that Natalie felt physically ill with guilt. Is this your first? Before Natalie could answer, the door opened, and Julian walked in, still in his surgical scrubs. His eyes immediately found Natalie, concern and warmth evident in his expression before he noticed Cassandra. His entire demeanor shifted, becoming more formal and distant. Cassandra, what are you doing here? I brought you lunch, darling. Cassandra stood, moving to kiss his cheek. You've been so busy lately that I thought I'd surprise you. I was just chatting with your patient about her pregnancy. Isn't it exciting? It makes me think about our own future children. Julian's eyes met Natalie's over Cassandra's shoulder, and the pain she saw there mirrored her own. This moment, this collision of his two worlds, was exactly what they had both been dreading. Ms. Brooks, Julian said formally, his professional mask firmly in place. I'm ready for your appointment now. Cassandra, I'm afraid I have a full afternoon scheduled. Perhaps we can have dinner tonight instead. Of course, Cassandra said graciously, though Natalie detected a hint of hurt in her voice at being dismissed. It was lovely meeting you, Ms. Brooks. I hope everything goes well with your pregnancy. As Cassandra left, the tension in the room became suffocating. Julian waited until he was certain she was gone before moving closer to Natalie. I'm sorry you had to go through that, he said quietly. I should have warned you that she comes by sometimes. She seems nice, Natalie said, her voice hollow. She really loves you, doesn't she? Julian's expression was tortured. It's complicated. Our families have been planning this union since we were children. Cassandra and I have known each other our whole lives. She's a good person, but what we have isn't love. It's convenience, expectation, business. Does she know that? Natalie challenged. Because from where I'm standing, she looks like a woman in love with her fiancé, planning a future with him, completely unaware that he's about to become a father with someone else. I'm going to tell her, Julian insisted. I just need to find the right time, the right way. Breaking this engagement isn't just about hurting Cassandra. It affects her father's political alliance with my family's medical empire. It affects business deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It affects the jobs of thousands of people who work in our hospitals. And what about me? Natalie asked, standing to face him. What about our children? Where do we fit in your complicated equations of business and politics and family expectations? Julian pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. You are the only simple thing in my life, Natalie. When I'm with you, everything makes sense. These babies, this connection between us, it's the only real thing I have. Everything else is just a performance, a role I've been playing my entire life. Then stop performing, Natalie whispered. Choose reality over the role. I'm trying, he said, his voice breaking. I swear to you, I'm trying to find a way through this that doesn't destroy everyone I care about. But as Natalie looked into his tormented eyes, she wondered if such a way existed, or if they were all heading toward an inevitable collision that would leave everyone broken. The confession. That changes everything that evening. Julian sat in his penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. a glass of whiskey untouched on the table beside him. His father, Richard Hayes, sat across from him in the leather chair, reviewing quarterly reports from their hospital chain. At 72, Richard Hayes was still formidable. A self-made billionaire who had built Hayes Medical from a single clinic into a nationwide empire. "The numbers from the Chicago facility are concerning," Richard said without looking up. "We need to implement cost-cutting measures. I'm thinking we reduce staff in the prenatal department. Those programs don't generate enough revenue to justify the expense." "Those programs save lives," Julian said flatly. "They provide care to women who would otherwise have no access to proper prenatal treatment." "They're charity work, not business," Richard countered. "We're not running a non-profit, Julian. When you take over as CEO after your wedding, you'll need to understand the difference between compassion and weakness." Julian stood abruptly, walking to the window. The city stretched out before him, millions of lights representing millions of lives. And somewhere out there was Natalie, carrying his children, navigating a world she didn't belong to because of one night they had shared. "What if I don't want to be CEO?" Julian asked quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard slowly set down the reports, his expression unreadable. "Excuse me? What if I don't want to marry Cassandra? What if I don't want to spend my life in board meetings and fundraising galas? What if I actually want to practice medicine to help people? To have a life that's mine, and not just an extension of your empire?" Richard stood, his voice dangerously calm. "Where is this coming from? You've never questioned your responsibilities before. Your engagement to Cassandra Wellington secures our family's future. Her father's political connections will open doors that money alone cannot. This marriage happens in 4 months, Julian. Everything is arranged." "I'm going to be a father," Julian said, turning to face his father. "In 6 months, I'm going to have 2 children. Twins. With a woman I met at a conference. A woman I fell in love with in a single night." The color rose in Richard's face, turning it an alarming shade of red. "You're what? How could you be so reckless? So stupid? Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? To our business relationships? To the Wellington Alliance?" "I don't care about any of that," Julian said, surprised by how true the words felt as he spoke them. "For the first time in my life, I don't care about maintaining appearances or protecting the family name. I care about being a father to my children. I care about the woman carrying them. This woman, whoever she is clearly after your money," Richard spat. "She saw an opportunity and trapped you. Women like that always do." "Don't talk about her like that," Julian's voice turned cold. "Natalie didn't even know who I was. She didn't know about the money or the hospitals or any of it. She's a graphic designer from Seattle who came here because she needed medical care she couldn't afford. She's brave and talented and kind, and she's carrying my children whether you approve or not." Richard moved closer, his presence intimidating even after all these years. "Listen to me very carefully, Julian. You will marry Cassandra Wellington as planned. You will take over as CEO of Hayes Medical. You can pay this woman child support, set her up somewhere discreet, see the children occasionally if you must. But you will not destroy everything I've built over one night of poor judgment." "It wasn't poor judgment," Julian said quietly. "It was the best decision I've ever made, even if I didn't know it at the time. And I won't hide my children or treat Natalie like some dirty secret. She deserves better than that. They all deserve better." "Then you'll have nothing," Richard said coldly. "I'll cut you off completely. You'll lose your position at the hospitals, your trust fund, your inheritance, everything. You'll be just another doctor making a doctor's salary, trying to support a family in a tiny apartment somewhere. Is she worth that? Are these children worth throwing away your entire future?" Julian met his father's glare with steady conviction. Yes, they are worth everything. When everything falls apart, the confrontation with his father left Julian shaken but resolved. He drove through the city streets at midnight, ending up outside Natalie's brownstone in Brooklyn. The lights were still on in the third-floor bedroom, and he could see her silhouette moving past the window. Without letting himself overthink it, he pressed the doorbell. Natalie appeared at the door in pajama pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Even without makeup, tired from pregnancy and the stress of recent weeks, She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. It's nearly 1 in the morning. Is everything okay? I told my father, he said, still standing on the doorstep. About you, about the babies, about everything. He gave me an ultimatum. Marry Cassandra and hide you away like some shameful secret, or lose everything and be cut off from the family completely. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God, Julian. What did you say? I chose you, he said simply. I chose us. I don't care about the money, or the company, or any of it. I just want to be with you and our children. Can't do that, Natalie said, pulling him inside and closing the door. I won't let you throw away your entire life because of one night we spent together. You've worked too hard, accomplished too much. None of it means anything without you, Julian insisted, following her into the living room. That night wasn't just one night, Natalie. It was the night I finally felt like myself instead of Richard Hayes' son or the future. CEO or Cassandra's convenient fiancés. With you, I'm just Julian. Just a man who fell impossibly, completely in love. Tears streamed down Natalie's face. But what about Cassandra? She doesn't deserve to be blindsided by this. She's been planning a wedding, a future. She thinks you love her. I know, Julian said miserably. I need to tell her the truth. Tomorrow, I can't keep living this lie. He moved closer, taking Natalie's hands in his. But I need to know something first. Do you feel the same way? Is this just about the babies for you, or is there more? Natalie looked up at him, her dark eyes shining with tears and something deeper. I've been falling in love with you since that first night on the rooftop. Even when I found out who you really were, even knowing how impossible this situation is, I couldn't stop. Every time you look at the ultrasound images with such wonder, every time you text to check if I ate lunch, every time you touch my stomach and talk to the babies, I fall a little more. But Julian, love isn't enough when choosing us means destroying your relationship with your father and breaking Cassandra's heart. Love is exactly enough, Julian said fiercely. It's the only thing that is enough. He kissed her then, pouring months of longing and confusion and finally finding clarity into that kiss. Natalie kissed him back with equal passion, her hands tangling in his hair. Their bodies remembering what their hearts had known all along. They belonged together. The hardest conversation the next morning. Julian met Cassandra at her favorite cafe in Manhattan, a trendy spot where they had shared countless brunches over the years. She arrived looking radiant in a soft pink dress, her engagement ring catching the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. This is a nice surprise, Cassandra said, kissing his cheek before sitting down. You've been so distant lately. I was beginning to worry. I thought maybe wedding stress was getting to you. Cassandra, we need to talk, Julian began. And something in his tone made her smile fade. That never precedes anything good, she said, trying to keep her voice light but failing. What's wrong? Julian took a deep breath, knowing that the words he was about to speak would hurt someone who had never been anything but kind to him. I can't marry you. I'm so sorry, but I can't go through with the wedding. The color drained from Cassandra's face. What, Julian? If this is cold feet, we can postpone. We don't have to rush into anything. It's not cold feet, Julian said gently. Cassandra, do you remember that patient you met at the hospital last week? Natalie Brooks. Understanding began to dawn in Cassandra's eyes, followed quickly by pain. The pregnant woman. Oh God, Julian. Tell me you're not saying what I think you're saying. She's carrying my children. Twins. I met her before you, and I got engaged. Before I knew what our families were planning, it was one night, but it changed everything. I fell in love with her, Cassandra. Really in love, in a way I never have been before. Cassandra stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Other cafe patrons turned to look, but she didn't seem to notice or care. So while I was planning our wedding, picking out flowers and sending invitations, you were falling in love with some random woman who's carrying your babies? How long have you known? About 2 weeks, Julian admitted. I didn't know she was pregnant when she came to the hospital. I hadn't seen her since that night. But Cassandra, when I saw her again, I realized that what you and I have been doing is pretending. We've been playing the roles our families wanted us to play, but we've never actually been in love. Don't tell me what I feel. Cassandra said, her voice shaking. I love you, Julian. I've loved you since we were teenagers. Just because it's not some dramatic romance doesn't make it less real. The admission surprised Julian. Cassandra, I didn't know. You never said. I thought you knew, she said, tears now flowing freely. I thought you felt the same way. Or at least, I hoped you would eventually. She grabbed her purse, her hands trembling. My father is going to be devastated. This alliance was supposed to secure both our families' futures. The business deals, the political connections, all of it depended on our marriage. I know, and I'm sorry. I'll take responsibility for breaking the engagement. I'll make sure your father understands this was entirely my fault. Cassandra laughed bitterly. Always the noble doctor. You know what, Julian? I hope you're happy with her. I hope she's worth losing everything for, because that's exactly what's going to happen. My father doesn't forgive easily, and neither does yours. You're choosing poverty and disgrace over privilege and partnership. I'm choosing love over convenience, Julian corrected quietly. And yes, she's worth it. They all are. After Cassandra left, Julian sat alone in the cafe for a long time, processing what had just happened. He had broken someone's heart, potentially destroyed his father's business plans, and likely thrown away his inheritance. But underneath the guilt and worry, there was also relief. For the first time in his adult life, he had made a choice based solely on what he wanted. Not what was expected of him, the emergency that brings clarity 3 days after the broken engagement. Julian was at the hospital when an urgent call came through. Natalie had been rushed to the emergency room with severe cramping and bleeding. Julian's heart stopped as he ran through the corridors. His mind filled with worst-case scenarios. He found her in an examination room, pale and scared, clutching her stomach, while a team of nurses worked around her. Dr. Patricia Morrison, one of his colleagues, was preparing to do an emergency ultrasound. Julian, Patricia said, surprised. I didn't realize Ms. Brooks was your patient. Given your personal connection, perhaps I should take over her care. What personal connection? Rebecca, the nurse asked, confused. Julian ignored the question, moving directly to Natalie's side and taking her hand. I'm not going anywhere. Patricia, what's happening? Possible placental abruption, Patricia explained, already moving the ultrasound wand over Natalie's belly. We need to assess whether the babies are in distress. The room fell silent as everyone watched the monitor. Julian held his breath, gripping Natalie's hand so tightly he was probably hurting her, but she gripped back just as fiercely. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Then the familiar sound of 2 heartbeats filled the room, strong and steady. Patricia smiled with relief. There they are. Both babies look good. Heart rates are strong. Ms. Brooks, you have a subchorionic hematoma, which caused the bleeding. It's serious, but manageable with bed rest and close monitoring. You and your babies are going to be fine. The relief was so intense that Julian felt his knees weaken. He leaned down, pressing his forehead against Natalie's, not caring that his entire staff was watching this intimate moment. I thought I was losing them, Natalie whispered. I thought I was losing our babies, Rebecca repeated softly. And Julian could hear the understanding and surprise in her voice as the pieces clicked together for everyone in the room. Julian lifted his head, looking around at his colleagues and staff, all of whom were watching with varying degrees of shock and curiosity. Yes, our babies. Natalie is carrying my children. We're together. And before anyone says anything, yes, I know I was engaged to someone else. That engagement is over. This is my family now. The declaration hung in the air for a moment before Patricia broke the silence with a gentle smile. Well, congratulations then. But Julian, given the situation, I really do think another doctor should take over her care. You're too emotionally involved to be objective. Patricia's right, Natalie said softly, though her hand still gripped his. You can't be my doctor anymore, Julian. Not when you're the father. Julian nodded, knowing they were right, but hating the idea of not being directly involved in every aspect of her care. Fine, Patricia. Will you take over as her primary physician? Booty want to be consulted on every decision. Of course, Patricia agreed. Now, Ms. Brooks needs rest. That means bed rest for at least 2 weeks, possibly longer. No stress, no work, just rest. As the medical team left to prepare Natalie's admission paperwork for overnight observation, Julian sat beside her bed, still holding her hand. "Your father is going to find out now," Natalie said quietly. "Everyone in this hospital will know by tomorrow." "Good," Julian said firmly. "I'm tired of secrets. I'm tired of pretending. I love you, Natalie Brooks. I love our children. And I don't care who knows it, even if it costs you everything." "You are everything," he corrected. "Everything else is just noise." The final confrontation that evening, as Julian kept vigil by Natalie's hospital bed, Richard Hayes appeared in the doorway. His face was carved from stone, his eyes cold with fury. "Get out," Richard said quietly to Natalie. "I need to speak with my son privately. She's not going anywhere." Julian stood, positioning himself between his father and Natalie's bed. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of her. She's the mother of your grandchildren, and you will treat her with respect." "Grandchildren I will never acknowledge," Richard said coldly. "You've made your choice, Julian. You've chosen this woman and her children over your family legacy. Over everything I built for you, fine. As of today, you're terminated from Hayes Medical. Your trust fund is frozen. Your name will be removed from all hospital documentation. You are no longer my son or my heir." The words should have hurt, Julian realized, but instead they felt like a weight lifting from his shoulders. "I accept that." "Do you?" Richard moved closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you accept that you'll be just another doctor making $70,000 a year? That you'll struggle to pay rent on a decent apartment? That you'll shop at discount stores and worry about dental insurance for your children? Because that's the life you're choosing." "I'm choosing a life where I wake up next to the woman I love," Julian said calmly. "Where I can hold my children and know they're more important than any board meeting or business deal. Where I practice medicine to heal people, not to increase profit margins. Yes, Father, I accept that completely." From the bed, Natalie spoke up, her voice soft but steady. "Mr. Hayes, I never meant to come between your family. I didn't know who Julian was when we met. I didn't pursue him for his money. I don't want his money. I just want him if he wants us." Richard turned his cold gaze on her. "You have no idea what you've done. The Wellington family is already threatening legal action over the broken engagement. Our business partnerships are in jeopardy. Senator Wellington has withdrawn his support for our hospital expansion. You've cost us hundreds of millions of dollars." "Then I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you," Julian said. "But I won't give her up. I won't give them up. If you can't accept that, then we have nothing more to say to each other." Richard stared at his son for a long moment. And for just a second, something like sadness flickered in his eyes before the cold mask returned. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." "No," Julian said softly. "The biggest mistake of my life would have been not making this choice." After Richard left, Julian returned to Natalie's bedside. She was crying silently, and he gently wiped away her tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I've ruined everything for you." "You've saved me," he corrected. "You've given me a reason to become the man I was always supposed to be, instead of the man everyone expected me to be." 6 months later, Brooklyn Brownstone was filled with evening sunlight and the sound of 2 babies crying in harmony. Julian, dressed in faded jeans and a t-shirt with spit up on the shoulder, walked the floor with a tiny bundle in each arm. Singing a lullaby his mother had sung to him when he was young, Natalie emerged from the bedroom, her hair in a messy ponytail. Wearing comfortable clothes that showed she was still recovering from giving birth to twins 6 weeks earlier, she looked exhausted and beautiful and more radiant than Julian had ever seen her. "How are they?" she asked, moving to take one of the babies from him. "Hungry, cranky, and perfect," Julian reported with a tired smile. "Sophie finally fell asleep, but Oliver is convinced he needs to practice his lungs for the opera." They settled onto the couch together, each holding a baby, marveling at the 2 tiny humans they had created. Sophie had Natalie's dark hair and Julian's hazel eyes, while Oliver had Julian's darker coloring but Natalie's delicate features. "Any regrets?" Natalie asked softly. Julian looked around their home. It wasn't a penthouse or a mansion. He now worked as an attending physician at a public hospital, making a fraction of what he used to earn. They worried about bills and shopped carefully and did their own laundry. His father still refused to speak to him, and high society had largely turned its back on the disgraced Hayes. Heir who had thrown away his fortune for a nobody, but every morning he woke up next to the woman he loved. Every evening he came home to these two perfect children. Every day he practiced medicine because he wanted to heal people, not because he had to maintain a family empire. His life was smaller now, but infinitely richer. "Not a single one," he said, leaning over to kiss Natalie softly. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Sophie stirred in Natalie's arms, making little sounds that would soon turn into full-fledged crying. Oliver, not wanting to be left out, began fussing as well. Julian and Natalie exchanged knowing looks and laughed. The kind of exhausted laughter that only new parents understand. "Double feeding time," Natalie announced, shifting Sophie into a more comfortable position as they settled into the familiar routine of feeding the twins. There was a knock at the door. Julian frowned, glancing at the clock. It was nearly 8 in the evening, and they weren't expecting anyone. "I'll get it," he said, carefully handing Oliver to Natalie before heading to the door. When he opened it, he found himself face to face with his mother, Carmen Hayes. She stood on the doorstep holding several shopping bags, her elegant clothes and jewelry seeming out of place in the casual Brooklyn neighborhood. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she had been crying. "Mom," Julian breathed, shocked. In the 6 months since his confrontation with his father, he hadn't heard from either of his parents. "What are you doing here?" Carmen's lower lip trembled. "I came to meet my grandchildren, if you'll let me." Julian stepped aside wordlessly, allowing her to enter. Carmen walked slowly into the living room, where Natalie sat on the couch with both babies. For a moment, the two women simply looked at each other, an entire conversation happening in that silent exchange. "Mrs. Hayes," Natalie said quietly, "would you like to hold one of them?" Carmen's composure cracked completely. She set down her bags and moved to the couch, tears streaming down her face as Natalie gently placed Sophie in her arms. Carmen looked down at the tiny baby, and a sound that was half laugh, half sob escaped her. "She has your eyes, Julian," Carmen whispered, "and she's absolutely perfect." "Her name is Sophie Carmen Hayes," Julian said softly, moving to sit beside his mother. "We named her after you." Carmen looked up at him, fresh tears flowing. "You named her after me? Even after everything your father did? Everything I didn't do to stop him?" "You're still my mother," Julian said simply. "And I wanted my daughter to carry on the name of a woman I've always admired, even if we've been apart." "I should have come sooner," Carmen said, gently touching Sophie's tiny hand with one finger. "I should have stood up to your father. I should have told him he was wrong to cut you off, wrong to choose business over family. But I was a coward." "You're here now," Natalie said gently, adjusting Oliver in her arms. "That's what matters." Carmen looked at Natalie with something like wonder. "You're very kind, especially considering I stood by while my husband tried to destroy your life." "You didn't try to destroy anything," Natalie replied. "And honestly, Mrs. Hayes, I understand family loyalty. I understand the complexity of long marriages and difficult choices. I don't blame you for your husband's decisions. You're far more gracious than I deserve," Carmen said. She looked back down at Sophie, then over at Oliver. "May I hold him too?" "Of course," Natalie said, carefully transferring Oliver to Carmen's other arm for several minutes. Carmen simply held her grandchildren, rocking them gently as tears continued to fall. Julian and Natalie gave her that time, understanding that this was a moment of healing that couldn't be rushed. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," Carmen finally said. "He's been impossible since you left, Julian. Angry all the time, working himself to exhaustion, refusing to even hear your name spoken in the house. But I finally realized that I was watching him destroy our family over pride and stubbornness. I couldn't be complicit in that anymore." "Does that mean you've left him?" Julian asked carefully. "No," Carmen admitted. "I'm not as brave as you. But I told him that I would be in my grandchildren's lives, with or without his approval. I told him that he could choose business over family, but I was choosing family." We're not speaking at the moment, but I had to come. I had to see these beautiful babies and meet the woman who made my son happy in a way he never was before. She looked at Natalie with genuine warmth. Thank you for loving him. Thank you for giving him the courage to choose his own path.